Well, let's get you some perspective from the region on these latest developments in Zimbabwe. Earlier, we spoke to Dianna Games. She's the chief executive of the advisory company Africa at Work.
Well, I think there's always room for concern because the divide is so large, and over the years it has produced many deaths and a lot of violence, and we see the pattern emerging again in this election, although there had been hopes that this wouldn't happen. And this is really based on a perception of the fact that the ZANU-PF was somehow rigging this election, certainly not in a very obvious way as it has done in the past, but that there was some sense that things weren't all okay during this election, and also the MDC won a landslide in the cities, and I think perhaps they were emboldened by that result and wanted to translate it into a bigger victory than it perhaps was. But because of the sense of rigging that lurked in the background, people are unsure at this stage. It's not as black and white as it should be. I think the dust will settle. It depends on the outcome of the electoral challenge. If that goes the way of ZANU-PF, there was a lot of goodwill towards ZANU-PF and President Mnangagwa, despite the fact that he actually was the right-hand man of former President Mugabe for many years, in fact his entire rule. So, but I do think people are anxious to get into Zimbabwe. Investors want to get in. There is a lot of low-hanging fruit. And a lot is needed in Zimbabwe. So, and the rebuilding does need to start as soon as possible. Definitely think that the violence and any kind of any taint of rigging has coloured the sort of outcome in a way that investors might think twice. And I think it also possibly will affect the possible lifting of sanctions because the European Union voiced its concerns about the conduct in the election, and the Americans have also now spoken out against the shooting of Zimbabweans by a Zimbabwe army during the protests recently. So I think there's a lot to be done, and investors are not going to rush in because the economy is very weak at the moment. There's no liquidity, there's no currency to speak of, so a lot needs to happen before investors will rush in, but there certainly is a lot of interest. And I think investors don't always mind about the way elections go and who's in charge. They look at the opportunities, and if the risk seems okay, they'll probably come in anyway. Well, I think in the past we've seen South Africa playing quite a strange role in the whole Zimbabwe story, a role of quiet diplomacy that was mostly ineffective, I think it has to be argued. And also the ANC and ZANU-PF have both been liberation struggle parties. There is a closeness between them that certainly the MDC doesn't, or the opposition in Zimbabwe doesn't enjoy with the ANC. So I think that a lot over the years, people have said South Africa could have done a lot more to change the course of Zimbabwe, to address the levers of change. But I think you will see South Africa hopefully playing a responsible role under President Ramaphosa. But whether, I think depending on, again, the electoral court outcome, if it swings towards the MDC, I think I don't think it would suit the ANC for the reasons I just outlined, but I think they would have to step up and address the issue as it unfolds in that event. So it's very difficult to say at this stage, but I think I would argue that the ANC would be happy with this outcome as it stands.